Welcome to the Soul Deep Podcast with Jessica Jante. Join me as we dive deep into raw, real, in-depth conversations about life, love, relationships, sexuality, spirituality, what it is we're really here for, and anything in between. I want this to feel like a safe space for anyone on a spiritual journey, trying to find answers in your truth by having open heart and open-minded conversations. And my hope for you as a listener is that you feel this is a safe space here, a place to hear things from a different perspective that may challenge you and your thinking in the best way possible, allowing you to give grace to how you've been raised or what you've been taught or told to believe. And perhaps you find your truth as I search for mine on this journey we call life. So grab your favorite drink, cozy on up to your couch or wherever you listen from, and join me for these soul deep conversations. All right, welcome back to the podcast. So today I have here with me Trisha. Trisha, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you for having me. I'm excited.
Yeah. Okay, well, before we get too far, I always love just to drop us into some breath to ground us into our energy and space here together. So if you're comfortable closing down your eyes, for those of you at home listening, if you're comfortable closing down your eyes, invitation to do that as well. So we'll just take some deep breaths in through our nose and out through the mouth. And just keeping this inhale and exhale going at your own pace. And taking those inhales deeply into your belly, all the way up into your chest. And then allowing your exhale to be just a little bit longer than your inhale. I think we so often try to rush through things, even in taking our breaths. We don't really notice the impact and the power that when we take this pause to just be with our breath and to be with our body, how important it is for us, for our nervous system, this little bit of relaxation, this little bit of slowing down, coming back into our body, into who we are. It really helps us in making decisions, helps us just slowing down the pace of life a little bit. Helps just connecting to who we are through our breath. Maybe giving some gratitude for your breath as you inhale and you exhale. Maybe even feeling into the air as it travels in through your nose, to the back of your throat, all the way down. Maybe feeling the difference, how the air feels when it comes out as when it goes in. Maybe just noticing these little sensations, these little things that we don't often take time to notice. We don't often take time to be thankful and grateful for. So maybe just giving a moment here of gratitude for our breath, for this time and space to just be, giving ourselves this moment of just presence. When we focus on our breath, we let go of all the other thoughts, all the other things around us. We're giving ourselves this gift of the present moment, which is so powerful and important as well. So we'll just take another big, deep inhale in here together. And a big exhale, letting something go. And whenever you're ready, just coming back to the screen, or if you want to stay in your process, you're welcome to as well. But thank you for joining me. Yeah, I love to just start anything, any call, any session, anything, even the podcast, off with some breath, because I just think it's just a beautiful way to just bring us to the present moment. So thank you for joining.
I like that because I haven't really thought about doing it on client sessions, like as we are normally like in life, and we talked about that already this morning. I was like going, and then we're here, so that was nice. I think I'll go start incorporating that.
Yes. I mean, ever since I started doing that, it helps you get out of like, okay, what else do I need to be doing? because sometimes we just come into a call or we come into a session or we come into whatever we're doing with this like energy of everything that happened, and then we're here, and then now we're expected to be fully present with what's going on, but you're still kind of over in the other area because you haven't just allowed yourself to be here. So it is so, so powerful. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, I would love if you would like to just tell us a little bit about yourself, where you're coming from, all that good stuff, who you are.
Yeah. So, my name's Trisha with a Y. My parents were ever so kind to make me different from birth, which is funny. I've always been like, oh, my parents gave me this hard name, but really, if I look back on it, they did just already go, you're going to be different. I was born and raised in a very small town, Mackenzie, BC. Like 3,400 people when all of the mills are up and running. Very small town, very outdoor activities. Like there wasn't a lot to really do in town unless you wanted to play hockey or join figure skating. So I grew up doing a lot with my dad, like fishing and camping and stuff like that. Yeah, it was just such a small town. Like it was in such a little isolated world. And then we moved to Prince George, which is a larger city. It's like 80,000 people, back in 2021, and then started this work and started traveling. And I was just like, wow, I lived in such this like just tiny box that's just so, it's almost like stuck back a couple of decades. And it's just kind of crazy to look at that's where I grew up, and now this is where I get to be. I am a mom of two. My kiddos are 10 and 7, which has so far been my favorite age. Attitude aside, they're like, it's the most fun. This year, my husband and I have been together for 15 years and married for 10. And I am a life coach. I work my business from home. And I used to work in lab and x-ray in the hospital. And yeah, I feel like that's kind of where I came from.
Awesome. Oh man, there's so many places. So small town. I mean, my small town is like 30,000 or so, but it just reminded me. So you came from a way smaller town, but I went to a private school, and there was only 8 in my class. So I'm wondering. I mean, you've got to be kind of similar if you're that small of a town. Yeah.
We normally had we were pretty full classes. We only had 2 schools in town too, though, so the whole population's funneled into the small space. But my grad class, we had the biggest grad class in like I think a decade, and we only had 56 kids in our grad class.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
that's the entire population's group of
Yeah.
16, 17-year-olds. Yeah.
Funny. So what moved you out of your small little town into, you said Prince George it was called?
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, yeah. Where'd you move?
Um, So when the pandemic happened, the pulp mill that my husband worked at shut down. He's a pipe fitter, so that was the only place in town that he could work. So just kind of forced our hand. Like we didn't think we would stay in Mackenzie forever because we knew as the kids got older, like we would want them to have more opportunities than we had growing up there. It just kind of forced our hand a little sooner than later, but that was probably also the first time that we were that whole like burn the boats concept. Like we very much so intuition. I took a casual position. Which casual for us is just pick up shifts when they become available. My husband didn't have a job. We didn't have anywhere to live. We didn't have daycare, like literally nothing lined up other than this take what you can position. And we just dove in feet first and figured it out as we went. And it was a rocky year. It was a lot of leaps of faith, just like continuously trusting that everything was going to work out. But it's cool because that was like the foundation of where I've gotten to where I am now, where I am a lot more willing to say, let's go do this thing and just we'll figure it out when we get there or as we go and all of those pieces. But yeah.
I love that. Yeah. And so you also, so my background is a nurse. And so when you said you worked in a hospital, so you said
Mhm.
lab, or what were you?
Yeah, so I took a lab and x-ray program. So when I went to school, oh, this is the fun thing. So growing up, we very much so, you lived in such a small town that you were either going to work in the mills, become a teacher, or work in the hospital. Like those were your 3 options. And I had always taken like science classes and like that stuff. And I knew I wanted to help people. So I went into healthcare. But going into healthcare, it was like, I don't really want to be a nurse for a variety of reasons. I don't want to go to school long enough to be a doctor. What's the other option at our hospital? Like, I was so narrow minded. So I went into the hospital to job shadow, and one of the girls there took this combined program. So you can work in lab and x-ray, which is ideal in our rural towns. Like, there's not enough work for everybody in all the positions. So I went to school for that so that I could come right back to my tiny little home. And then when we moved to Prince George, I started to just work in the lab, which was a very different dynamic. Like in our small town, it was very hands-on, lots of patient care. We were on call after hours, which was burning me out so quickly. And then here it was just in the lab, no direct patient care. I'm just running samples and not on call. I had like fixed hours. And that was the first time that I felt like I can breathe working in healthcare, which was so crazy after the pandemic. But yeah, because how long ago did you walk away from nursing?
Mine was about 3.5 years ago. It was like October of 22, 21, 22.
Mm-hmm. So like you got through that pandemic portion too.
I did. They were mandating the vaccine at the time
Mm-hmm.
when I quit. And so
Yeah.
that was one of the big reasons that I left, is that I just felt like I was feeling very forced to
Yeah.
get this vaccine and to do something that I didn't feel like aligned with me. So I
Mm-hmm.
was trying to write an exemption. I was already burned out at this point, though. I was already burned out. Felt like the area that I was in was not where I was meant to be. Just so many different things. And I really feel like it was like this God moment for me where I was like, if I wouldn't have moved, like if I wouldn't have done it, like I think it was like this push, like, okay, I'm going to push you out because I've been giving you all these signs for a really long time and this is not what you're
Yeah.
meant to be doing anymore and you're just not listening. So yeah, it was. And then I was trying to write an exemption, and I remember just being up at night, like trying to write this exemption and be like, why? I remember sitting there and like tears are coming down my face. Like, why am I trying so hard to write an exemption for this job that I don't even want to be doing? Like, it was just
Yeah.
kind of this light bulb that's like, what are you doing? What are you doing?
Yeah.
So, yeah, but it was hard. It was such a hard decision to leave. And I'm sure yours was probably the same. Like, what made you leave? Unless you're still in it. Are you still in it?
I am. I have like one baby toe in the door. I went back to casual so that I could keep benefits. Um, I, I had started to realize that the job was not working for me. I'm diagnosed bipolar, so consistency is big for me, and like I very much so I take everything around that disorder like so seriously. I don't want to be like massive swings and stuff like that. I want to be a functioning human being. And the on call was so sporadic. It was we were so I worked like full time during the week, during the day, and then after hours every other week we took call. So that meant getting called in the middle of the night. It meant putting dinner in the oven and getting called in, and then now I haven't eaten for 6 hours, and it was so sporadic. Even when I was pregnant with my son, I wound up on maternity leave early because it was so taxing on my body. And probably 2019, I started to get to this point where I was like, this job is literally going to kill me. Like, I can't do this for another 30 years. And then the pandemic happened, and same thing. I think it was like I've been giving you all these nudges. Network marketing came into my life, and that was the first time, like I said, living in this tiny town with these like three career options. It was probably the first time that I was like, oh, maybe I could do something different. So in keeping with wanting to help people, I did like the health and fitness thing, running accountability groups, all of that. I needed it for myself just as much, but that was where it kind of got birthed, where I was like, maybe I could start exiting. And then when we moved here and I wasn't on call anymore, that was the first time that I was almost like, maybe I got away from it enough. Like maybe now, because I don't have direct patient care, because I'm an empath, that direct patient care was so taxing on me. And I'm not on call. I've got these consistent hours. Like maybe this is okay. And I almost wanted to settle. I was like, no, when I do this work with other people in this place where they want to help themselves and they want to make this change, like that lights me up. I love doing this work. And then I go to the hospital and it's like I'm working in a basement in a dungeon. There's no windows and like, oh, and I can't just take time off for my kids. I remember my son, this was probably the moment that I did come back around to know I want the time freedom. Was my son had a week that he was getting migraines and he was like 4 years old at the time. And every day that I called in sick, somebody was answering the phone, giving me attitude, like that, like short. I'm like, I can't come in today. My son's got a migraine. Like he can't come in. And it's like, they think that you're just hamming it up or I don't know, or they're just irritated. They're going to work short, which I get, and they're allowed to feel that way. But I felt like I couldn't care for my family or for myself without being guilted for doing so. And that was probably the final straw for me to be like, no, we're gonna get back to me. In 2023, this time's so weird lately. 2023, my husband took a job out of town, and when he did that, we agreed that the kids shouldn't have two parents away. He's making way more money working this job right now. It was a very different experience. He's also getting away from the toxic like pulp mill environment. So that was when I went casual at the hospital, and I was given the opportunity to just like full send on my business, go all in. Like while the kids are at school 9 to 2, I'm like here, and it's amazing. And then just every once in a while I pick up a random shift just to kind of keep my skills up, but I don't think that I'll be there before the year is over.
Yeah. That's amazing. I love that story. So there's so many things that I want to ask, but first one. So right now, what are you doing then? You said life coach. You also talked about network marketing.
Mhm.
So what do you do right now as part of your job?
Yeah, so I
Or your
left network
focus?
marketing last year. I left network marketing last year. And then on top of the life coaching, so at the end of November, I signed up for the Trifecta Alchemy certification as well because I was just starting to do so much of that breath work and Kundalini classes. And I'm very much the person that's like, I love this. I want to share it with others. So diving into the certification. So I'm just like, I have such a hard time saying this is what I'm doing because it's just always evolving. Like every month, if you come talk to me, my answer is going to be something different than it was last time we talked. But yeah, just working with my clients one on one, running group programs. Last week's the first time I ran a new moon circle, and that was super fun and so special. So I imagine that that'll be a consistency in my repertoire now for the next little bit. But a lot of reaching out and connecting right now. Like it's a lot of just expanding my audience and exploring this new world with the spiritual side of things and the energetic work and stuff.
Yeah, I love that. And
Yeah.
so do you see people in person, like when you did your new moon stuff and seeing clients and things? Is anything in person or is everything online?
Everything's online so far, but I already have my eye on a studio in town that does tons of yoga, so I'm gonna kind of start to plant that seed. Like maybe I could run the occasional yoga class there, or even just utilize her space for the new moon circles, because I want that in person aspect, especially after As She Rises. Like it's one thing to do the virtual things, but going to classes in person and feeling the physical energy is so different than this.
100%. I mean,
Yeah.
that's what I too. I mean, I feel like we're so similar on our paths. Like I for a while there had left and I was like, I'm just going to do everything online. And then I missed that like in person and I had been asked to come and do like a retreat or just do breath work at someone's like they were doing a little retreat. And this was like over 2 years ago. And I felt such a deep connection to doing this work. I'm like, oh, I'm meant to do this in person too, like not just online. Like it is, there's such a profile, like when you can get, especially women, when you can get women together to
Mhm.
heal and to grow and to, I don't know, there's just this special connection that happens. There's a special like vulnerability that happens when you allow yourself to be seen and witnessed and held in a container of other women. It just is, there's just something beautiful about that.
Because you
So,
can't shut
yeah.
your video off in person,
Right.
right? Like, yeah,
Mhm.
you can't. you can't just like soften your voice. Like you naturally, the last breathwork class that I went to, we were doing, we were chanting together, and it's
Mm,
impossible to make your voice small when you're in a room where everybody is using your voice loud. Like I feel like it naturally pulled, like it's so magnetic. It's a very different experience. Like it really does pull you out of your shell.
yeah. Yeah, and speaking of using your voice too, when you do things online, you don't typically hear because everybody's muted, so you're not hearing everybody else. But when you're in person, then you almost like build on this power. You can feel this energy and this power inside of you, like, whoo, I can feel everybody else. It almost makes you feel a little freer to use your voice as well. So
Mhm.
yeah, it is super powerful.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then you're not just talking to yourself. That's the one
Yeah.
weird, like everybody can't unmute themselves or it'd be chaos and nobody could hear anything. But
Yeah.
yeah, sometimes it just kind of feels like you're almost just talking to yourself too. So
Yeah.
yeah.
I love that. So you talked about your history just a little bit. So I didn't know this, that your bipolar history. So
Mhm.
can you talk a little bit about that and how was that growing up? Because I mean, I know being a nurse, I've dealt a lot with, I worked ICU mostly, but
Mhm.
then having to send people, into mental health facilities and different things like that. Like mental health care is just, and I don't know how it is in Canada, if it's different or not, but I feel like there's just a lack in care and in all the things having to
Very
do
much
with
so.
anything mental health related. So I would love if you are comfortable sharing a little bit about your story and that journey. I would love to hear.
Mhm. Yeah. So this one will be a little long.
That's
But this
perfect. It's
is
great.
this is a large part of I think why I am so passionate about the work that we're doing because it's been such a journey. So like I said, like growing up in that small town, growing up with my parents did the best that they could with what they had and what they knew. But growing up, it was you're 13. What do you have to be stressed about? Like there was so much just shutting down the emotions that I was experiencing. And I think it was 15 when I had my first panic attack. And I remember the whole year I'd been having these like chest pains, and I just kept getting told, you're doing too much, you're doing too much, like take something off your plate. I loved everything I was doing. Like I talked about this at As She Rises. Like I liked the courses that I was taking. I loved being in leadership and like staying late to do spirit weeks and set up dances. I had friends, I had boyfriends, like I did literally anything and everything I wanted to do, and I was just constantly told, you're doing too much. And when I had that panic attack, I remember I just started to feel tingly, and I was at school and I was like, I don't know what's happening right now. And I got them to phone my mom, and my mom came to pick me up. And by the time she got to the school, half of my body was just numb, and I had no idea what was happening. And I got to the school, or to the hospital, sorry, and they took a chest x-ray and stuff like that because I was adamant, like, this chest pain has been insane. And I just remember again being told, you're doing too much. Like, you're just experiencing stress. Anxiety wasn't even mentioned at the time. Like, that wasn't even in the realm of possibility for like a 15, 16-year-old to be experiencing that. So it was just like constantly brushed under the rug as a teenager. And then when I had my daughter, um, I had postpartum depression, and I didn't know that that's what it was again. I remember we were 3 days at home, and I was just sitting in her room, rocking with her on the floor, crying, thinking like this isn't what I wanted, and just that like immense weight of, my husband's sleeping and he's got to go to work. Like I have to keep this baby like quiet, and like it was so
Oh,
bad. I used to call my husband crying, and he would come home from work, no questions asked. My husband is a saint. I don't know. Like I always say, I don't know what I did right in my life to get him, but I do know what I did right in my life to get him at the same time. But like, he just no questions asked. He would always come home. Um, and we hit this breaking point after my daughter turned a year. So for a year, I dealt with postpartum depression, not knowing that that's what it was, dealing with it like in silence, but not in silence. Like, I'm sorry, my camera just does this thing.
that's
Um,
it.
but I just pushed through. I just felt like this will go away. I didn't want my kid to get taken away. I didn't want my husband to think less of me. Like, I just felt so ashamed of how I was feeling. And after she turned a year, we had this one night and I was just so drunk that I let it out. And I told my husband, I was like, this is what I've been experiencing for the last year. And he's like, I mean, I know something was wrong. Like it was pretty evident in how much you were crying, but like, I wish that you would have opened up about this. Um, and there was nothing that we could really do at that point. Like I was already a year out from postpartum and all of the things. Counseling was not something that was talked about in my family at all. But when I got pregnant with my son, so that was 2014. And then in 2017, when I got pregnant with my son, I was like 4 months in before I had the first moment that I had suicidal thoughts. And that was like earth shattering for me to be like, I literally have my baby. My daughter is turning 3 next week. And that rocked my world. And that was the first time that we agreed that, no, I'm going to go to counseling. And I just remember crying through the whole first session because it was the first time I'd actually said out loud the thoughts that had only ever existed in my head. And then from there, I've been seeing a counselor since 2017. It has been an absolute roller coaster of a journey. My son did not sleep very well when he was born. He always had to be on me. I was so touched out. I was so exhausted. Getting like 2 hours of sleep at a time is just like, I don't know how single parents do it. I really, really don't. Probably, what was it? I went back to work in 2018 and I remember going back and we get a year of maternity leave, thank God. And I went back to work and I was there for, I think, 3 months and I got newborn baby tired. I was like stumbling over words. I couldn't form straight sentences. Even with like 8-10 hours of sleep, I was napping on my lunch breaks. I was like, something's not right. And that was probably the first time that I advocated for myself when I went to the doctor because they were like, yeah, you're a mom with 2 kids back to work. Like, of course you're tired. And I was like, no, like, you don't understand. I feel like I did when I was getting 2 hours of sleep and I have no reason to be this tired. And that was the first time that we started pursuing stuff and we found out that I've got a autoimmune disorder. So I've got Hashimoto's, my thyroid was out. And then from there, we were on the thyroid medication, and they thought maybe that was part of why I was struggling with my mood, which at the time we thought was just general anxiety, kind of transpired from the postpartum depression and all of those things. And then that's when I started my journey with medication. And they said, like, the first time they put me on an SSRI, they said, if you are bipolar, because it runs in my dad's side of the family, they said, this will trigger hypomania. Like, we'll know right away if that's what it is. And it didn't. It was such a relief from everything I'd been experiencing for so many years. It felt like the first time I'd just been like drowning in the water. It was the first time I was just given like water wings and I didn't have to try so hard. And that was everything for me. And that was the year we tried so many medications and I was constantly like, I'm feeling good. I want to go off of them because I was so resistant to being on them. I was like, I can do this on my own. I just needed a break because there's concerns in my family. They're like, you're going to be on medication for the rest of your life. Like, it was so stigmatized. And eventually we got to a point where the things that used to work were no longer working. And even with the medications, I was still just like up and down and drowning. And it felt like every time I got a breath of air, it was just crashing back down. And it was getting to the point where I could be hypomanic and depressed like in the same day. And it was just exhausting. That was the first time I got a referral to a psychiatrist. And I was put on a 6-month wait list. I was like, I've been doing this for 4 years. Like, what do you mean? And thankfully, I was very lucky and I got in on a cancellation after I think like 6 weeks. Like, I was very fortunate that way. Finally got the actual diagnosis, got on the right medication, got off of the wrong medication, which was its own journey. And then it's just been since finding that out, it's like now that I know what I'm dealing with, I can actually take proper steps. Like, consistent sleep schedule is huge for me. I can't be like going to bed at 9 or staying up till 1. Like, I've got a window of time that I go to bed in and a window of time that I wake up at. Even eating is like within a consistent time. Like consistency is huge for me because it just keeps me grounded. It keeps me stable. Um, and then it's I always call this closing the gap with my clients, but it's just getting the intensity is less and it's happening less frequently, and the time that it happens is so much shorter because my awareness around it is just so much bigger. December, like just this last Christmas, is the first time I've had like a big hypomanic episode as far as length goes. But even the intensity, it was so low that I didn't even realize it was happening until like probably 2 to 3 weeks in, which was huge for me. And it's come such a long way.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So interesting. So I'm really interested in how all of this ties in because the and even bipolar because so and I guess I don't know enough about it, but are you born with bipolar? Is this like a yeah, something you're born with, or is this something that is created through after having children and different things like that? Like, do you know much about it that way?
I think that so from the reading that I've done, which is like Dr. Google, it's not like super accurate stuff. But even just looking back at my experiences, I think that if I had had better coping mechanisms, it might not have progressed to the point that it did. But also, it's like it runs in our family. So I don't know if it was just inherited and kind of like autoimmune disorder. Like the the autoimmune disorder manifested because of the mental health that was just like constantly going unaddressed. But yeah, I don't know if it's like would it have happened anyways or would it, and I used to fester on that. I used to be like, if we would have dealt with my mental health in high school, like I never would have gotten here. And that was probably my like angsty teenager when I first got the diagnosis. And I was like, this is everybody else's fault and all of these things. And now I've come to a place where I'm like, it is what it is. I've stopped the whole, maybe I'll go off of meds one day. Like things are working. Let's leave it how it is. Let's keep doing what we're doing and life is good. And there's nothing wrong with being on medication. Um, the first time it felt normalized for me was somebody said you wouldn't shame somebody for needing glasses to see. Like if you need medication, I don't have anything against my thyroid medication. So why do we have this stigma around some of us just chemically in our brains do need the assistance. So
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, the reason I asked is it was just very interesting because I know in like the work that I've done and the research that I've done, there's just been a lot that I've learned that through our body, unless you have like physically broken a bone or something, an accident or something has happened,
yeah,
that a lot of things that happen to us, especially autoimmune diseases and disorders, are manifestations of just not taking care of our body and not just our nervous system too, and not
yeah,
taking care of our breathing properly. And yeah, I think taking care of your nervous system, like just being in this constant fight or flight state, this your sympathetic is constantly activated, and not learning how to build and create that capacity for everything that is happening around you, and
mm,
it just manifests in disease and illness and sickness because we a lot of times we just bury things down. We bury all the trauma, whether it's big trauma or little trauma, like anything that's happened to us, we kind of just bury it and stuff it down. We try not to feel our feelings, especially how we've been brought up where you're talking about in your teenage years too, like you're fine, don't feel, you're fine, everything will be fine. Like we just get poo-pooed so much
yeah,
that we were taught we don't need to feel or we shouldn't feel. We'll just push everything down, pretend everything is fine. Well, then where does that go? It just stays stuck in our body. And so that then
mm,
comes out in there's so many people that I know, especially like around our age and things. I know I'm a little older than you, but that comes out in autoimmune disorders, dysautonomia. Like I have POTS. My sister has Hashimoto's. So it's like, it's just so interesting when you were tying it and you were talking about having that and then also the bipolar. I'm like, it just is really intriguing to me that if we could really take care of our mental health at an early age, which
Mm-hmm.
is not just saying mental health in you have a disorder, but like our mental health of taking care of our emotions, our thoughts, our feelings, like our mental, physically, our mental health. Like if we take care of that and we nurture that at a young age, how much disease and illness and sickness will we reverse or will we not have as kids are getting older, as we're learning to be able to teach our kids this stuff? Like I think it'll be very interesting to see like how
Mm-hmm.
that shifts and if mental illness will be a thing of the past as we are learning more and more about how to heal ourselves.
Yeah. I think too, I've been working with, I'm such an analogies person. Like I think it helps so much to have those visuals, but as you're saying, like the things that like we stuff down is if we think about these boxes, like you're in like that frantic energy and you're just like, you're told, oh, you have nothing to be stressed about. So you're like, oh, okay, I don't have to deal with this box. I'll just toss it to the side. And if you imagine doing that in your home, like over time, you end up looking like a hoarder and then you're having a hard time walking around. And eventually, yeah, like what other choice does your body have than to just say, no more? Like we can't do anything with all of this. And we do all have different tipping points. And I think if you think about like living in an apartment or living in a mansion, like your capacity is going to be different on how much you can take before you do crash. Because even looking at, I think a lot of us are hitting that breaking point earlier and earlier. Like if I look at my parents, if I look at my mom's upbringing, there's no way she doesn't have a mansion full of boxes of stuff that was stuffed down. And it's like I was in this one bedroom apartment and I could only make it to my 20s before it was like, no more, no more, we can't do this. But what a blessing, because then now I get to have these conversations with my kids. And like I remember the first time I was able to explain what overwhelm felt like. It was like when I'm in the kitchen and the fan's going and the smoke detector goes off and you guys need something from me and I'm trying to not burn dinner. It's like it literally starts to feel like there's fireworks going off in my brain. Like that's the best way I can explain it. And I think it was not even a week later. I could hear the kids playing in the living room and Jackson's 5 at the time. He's like, stop it, Zoe, you're overwhelming me. And I was like, it's happening. We're breaking generational cycles. And then my daughter yesterday asked me, she says, Mom, I'm really stressed out at school. Like I'm fighting with my friends a lot. She's 10. Like we're coming into that stage. And she's like, can you book me a counselor's appointment? And that was such an emotional moment for me because when we lost my mother-in-law, I sent her to counseling because she was experiencing like a ton of grief. But that was the first time that she asked to go. And I was like, man, I am doing something right here. Like, it's just, I think you're right. Like, over time, we're going to experience it so much less. And there's going to be like beautiful conversations around it with our family. And I used to have this fear that, you know, if bipolar is genetic, if it is something that you're born with and it's just like waiting to be triggered, can I give my kids enough tools that even when it happens, they're confident in how they're going to navigate it? It's not going to be this like catastrophic, because it has the potential to be like, you can make some very bad life choices, right? But maybe I could help them not get there. Like maybe I could help them get to this place where it's just like, okay, this is a factor that I consider in my day-to-day life, but that's it. It's not who I am. It doesn't define me. I'm not broken because I'm experiencing it. Like, yeah, it's so cool to see how much we can shift that. But even as I've started to do my work, it's like, yeah, all these boxes were in the house, but now I have the capacity to sort through them and say, what am I going to keep and what's going to the dump? And what is maybe just need to come out of this box and like actually sit on a shelf. Like, can I say that, yeah, I'm going to experience these emotions and they're not going to sit in this closed off box anymore. When I'm ready, I'm going to go grab my blanket and I'm going to have my sad moment, and that's okay. And when I need the hammer so that I can go rage on something, like I get to have that and not have it be something that like has to come and go. But what are the pieces that we're born into me and like planted over years that no, I don't want to keep this anymore. You do too much. No, it's not that I'm doing too much. I'm maybe doing too many of the wrong things, but how can I get rid of those things? And then now I've got this like neatly organized, beautiful internal home. And then it's like it's lovely to live here again. So
Yes. Gosh, that was
yeah.
so beautiful. That analysis was really beautiful. Yeah, and I think it's so important too as we're teaching our kids. It's like they are, yeah, they get to have this beautiful experience of being able to feel all these feelings and like everything that you've gone through, and you've already talked about how this beautifully, that you know it wasn't this like thing that you are like, oh gosh, I have this disorder and now I'm, like I have it for life and it's just going to be terrible. Like you have this beautiful outlook on it. Like you have been given this as a gift so that you can help other people, whether it's your kids or, your clients that you're working with, to be able to be like, okay, this was a gift that I'm using to be able to help other people to see, to be able to feel and to know it's okay to feel. And I think that's one of the huge things. That's what I see a lot in my community, in the area that I'm in, is people just don't want to do the work because they're afraid to feel. They're
Yeah.
afraid to feel the things from the past. They don't want to go back there because they're afraid that, when they unpack these boxes, like you were talking about, that something's going to come out and they're not going to. I think what people think is that this box is going to get unpacked. You've got this thing sitting in front of you and you're never going to be able to get out of it. And I think they're just stuck in this fear of like, I'll forever be thinking about it and feeling this then. It will never go away. It will always be here. And so I don't want to do that. And so I'm just going to pretend that that's not there. Whereas
Mm-hmm.
if we feel our feelings, we allow ourselves to process through and to bring it up to be felt, to be seen, to be witnessed. There's so much power in that. There's so much power in that. Just to have it out in the open and say like, yes, this is a piece of my story. Maybe it's a part that you're not super proud of, or maybe it's a part that you don't want to remember and sit and think about, but it's part of your story. And so we need to feel that and then
Mm-hmm.
allow it to move through, and we can move through it if we use the right tools, if we talk to the right people. Like that's why it's so important, like you were talking about, having a counselor or getting a coach, or just using these tools and finding the resources to walk through it with you. You don't have to do it alone. Like, yes, maybe it feels scary to do it alone, but if you have somebody in your corner to walk
Mm-hmm.
through it with you, it can be such a beautiful process and so empowering. Like I have found that yes, this healing work can be hard. It can be very hard, but it can be so powerful. And all these little things that you're learning can just be used to help other people. It's just like, it's almost like your superpower is going through all of that junk and like bringing it back up and then using it for good.
Yeah.
So,
I think
yeah.
too, even thinking about if you have 10 boxes, you don't know what box has that thing that you're scared to deal with. And there are boxes that are manageable. And I think that sometimes we don't want to deal with that thing, but it's always going to be in the back of your mind. Like if we move into this house, because we just moved in December, if I have this box sitting at the top of the stairs and every day I walk up and I look at it and I think, oh, I should deal with that. That's an energy drain, right? It's constantly in the back of your head that I still have this thing to deal with. I still have this thing to deal with. Like you kind of have to take that chance that when we do this work, like, and I'd love to hear your take on it because I'm only just diving into like Kundalini and the chakras and like grounding and root and all of the work. But being able to say, okay, I might crack open the box that I'm not ready to deal with yet, but I might get like 5 or 6 boxes that are manageable things before I get to the box that I don't want to deal with. Like how could somebody implement a practice that helps them to feel safe in diving into that work?
Yeah. Oh, that's such a great one. And I think the word safe that you use, that's so important. And that's something that I really work a lot towards, is maintaining that safety in your body, because you're not going to heal. You're not going to be able to walk through it if you don't feel safe. And
Mm-hmm.
so that is number one. That's like one of the first things that I do with clients that I work with in group work or in one-on-one work, is finding safety. And I remember I was in a breathwork certification, and one of the first classes that we did is she had us just laying there and didn't explain to me how to find safety in my body, but just said, you need to find safety, or something about finding safety. And that whole like 45-minute session, that's all that I could think about. My mind just went over and over and over again. Like, I don't know. How do I find safety in my body? What is safe? I don't know. All I could think about was like my husband or my home or my bed, or like the things outside of myself. But accessing safety in myself felt so foreign, felt so like I just didn't know how to do it. And so I think I was given that as a gift so that I can bring it to other people, because finding safety in yourself is so important. It's like the number one thing I think we should do as people is just learning how to find safety in ourselves, because anything can happen at any time to anyone around us. And in order to take care of who we are, to be able to breathe into or feel into just safety is huge. And so for me, I do a lot of that through breath. I mean, breath work found me, and that was just the way that I've been able to access it, is through my breath, through energetic practices. But really, it's just coming home and bringing awareness to who I am, to how I operate, and just be the observer of your life, I think is the huge thing. But it takes the time, and it takes the energy and the practice of just, how do I learn myself? How do I know who I am? How do I know what I love? But it's taking that time to breathe into it, to be with yourself, to just learn yourself and who you are. So yeah, it's beautiful when you can find safety in yourself. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. So one of the things, I actually had this conversation with a client last week when we were doing our new moon circle, and she's like, I just want to be that safe space that, when my kids' friends want to come over, they're like, I can just walk into the house and I can help myself to the pantry. And she's like, she's also a nurse. She's like, I just want my patients to feel safe with me. And I was like, okay, so safety is how you want to feel. Is like, what does safety mean to you? And just thinking about, like, we're all so different, right? If I think about my home where I live, I don't need to lock the door during the day to feel safe. I need to, in the fall, remember to look outside the door and make sure there isn't a bear there. But like, I feel safe having an open door. Like, I live in a neighborhood that makes me feel like confident and at peace, and like there's sort of this flow, but safety feels different for everybody. Like, we require different pieces. So for someone that is like on that journey where they're like, okay, I know what safety feels like me in my home, or having my husband home, and all these things, like, what would be a way that you would tune into, okay, but like, external circumstances aside, what does safety feel like in me? Like, how would somebody start to find that?
That's a great question. So for me, I guess how I've accessed it and how I've learned it for myself is the way that I kind of just teach people, and it's through the breath. It's even in just like the practice that we did at first, where we just sat with that inhale and that exhale. And then it's just going through, like, what are the thoughts that are coming up right now? What are because a lot of times when you just sit with your breath, I mean, people, especially in like meditation and stuff too, like I was always that person where I was like, I can't meditate. My mind is 5,000 other places, something that I did ridiculous when I was in high school. Like, it's just the crazy things that come up when you're just trying to sit there. And so I think it's being with your breath and coming back to your breath is what I tell people, is just following that breath, that inhale and that exhale, and then just finding a quiet space. So I used to have a closet that I would, because I didn't have my own like space that I do now, but I would just have this closet that I would go into, and I would sit there, I would just do some breath, and I would just say to myself, okay, how do I access safety today? Like, how can I find safety in myself? Because it was a practice. It wasn't something that I was like, okay, I did breath work once and then I just found it. It was a practice. It was like a constant coming back to myself. That's like, what does feel safe? Can I sit here with myself for a minute, or does that not feel safe? And it
Mm-hmm.
was building, like we talked about, building capacity. So it was building this capacity inside of myself where maybe the first day was only 30 seconds that I could sit there in the stillness with myself. And then it was like doing this repetitively. And so for me, it was building this breathwork practice that I did every day, and not saying that it has to be an hour long. It can be a minute, 2 minutes, 5 minutes, 10 minutes, whatever you can spare for yourself. But it's breathing into like, how can I create safety in myself? How can I create safety outside of everything else that's happening? Because we can't control the outside. We can't control what's going to happen to us. We can't control the environment. We can't control what people are going to say or think. We can only control what's in here. And so it's a process. It's literally a process that you have to go through, and it's coming home to yourself each and every day, taking
Mm-hmm.
that time, which a lot of people don't like to do, but it's the hard truth. It's really taking time to learn who you are, to learn how you function, to bring awareness to who you are, maybe the pieces that you don't love that keep coming up when you sit in like a meditation or something, and you're like, gosh, I feel like every time that always comes up for me. So now it's going and sitting with that thought. Why does that
Mm-hmm.
thought keep coming up? What does it need to tell you? Maybe it just needs to tell you something. It just needs to be heard. So you just sit with that thought, like, okay, what do you need right now? And sometimes I mean, there's been, I don't know if you've learned this in like counseling or therapy too, but activating your senses. That's a huge
Mm-hmm.
thing for finding
Yeah.
safety. So looking around you, especially if you're doing breath and you're like, okay, you're sitting there and you're like, gosh, I don't feel safe right now. Just opening your eyes and being like, okay, what can I see? What can I hear? What can I taste? What can I smell? What can I feel? Just allowing yourself, and it's literally just building this capacity each and every day, and just doing maybe just a little bit longer than you did the day before, but it's allowing yourself to sit with yourself in the stillness, in the silence, which can be scary and it can be hard, but it can be so beautiful when you learn who you are, when you learn your truth, when you learn what it's like to be with yourself. Because if you can't be with yourself, if you can't sit
Yeah.
with yourself, and how are you going to expect someone else to be and sit with you too? Like, you have to know who you are, and you have to know what lights you up, what feels safe, what doesn't feel safe. It's really just asking yourself the questions. What
Mm-hmm.
feels safe to me right now? What doesn't feel safe to me right now? And then just building on those things, like, okay, when I maybe noticing too, like how you feel when you're around certain people. I'm doing this nervous system reset challenge right now. And
Mm-hmm.
this is one of the things that we've been kind of going through. It's like, what feels excuse me, what, like when you go into a room or when you're with people, you can feel that energy. Like if I'm sitting with you, I'm like, oh, she feels like a safe person to be around, like she feels, comfortable. But then
Mm-hmm.
if you've ever been in a room where you feel like someone's energy just feels like tense or whatever, and you're like, ooh, that doesn't feel super great, I don't love it. It's like bringing that awareness to like, that person always feels a little bit negative, I don't know that I want to spend my time there. Or a place. If you always go to a certain place and you're like, this place feels not great for my energy or not great for my being, it's noticing those things, and then not just noticing and being like, oh, but it doesn't mean anything, because it
Yeah.
does. Like,
Yeah.
our body is constantly talking to us, it's constantly telling us, it's constantly in communication with us, but we're so busy going and we're so busy doing that we don't take that time to be with our body, to be with our breath, to allow our body to tell us what it needs and how it feels. And so it's really taking time to learn who you are, to learn what you love and what you don't love, to be the observer of your life, to bring awareness to all the parts of you, what you're eating, what you're drinking, what you're listening to, what you're consuming. Like, all of that is so important to bringing safety to your body. I was telling my
Mm-hmm.
kids, this was not like this year, it was probably a year or so ago, but like scary movies, like my daughter loves scary movies. I do not like scary movies.
I
I
can't
does
either.
not create safety in my body. It creates this
Yeah.
feeling of like panic, and I get sweaty, and I'm like, why? So after a while, after I've been doing this work for a little bit, I'm like, why do I put myself through this? Like, why am I sitting here watching this? I don't need to. There's no reason for it. Like, I can say no, I don't want to watch that. It doesn't feel safe in my body. But it was like the learning of like the light bulb went off, like, wait, why am I sitting here? feeling like this. I don't want to feel like this. But it's just bringing awareness to, and it's not like it's going to be snap of the finger and you're going to have it. It's going to
Mhm.
just be a process of like learning who you are and what you love and what you don't, and then going with that. Yeah.
Yeah. I think that the like as we talk about the capacity side of this too, which I love. I know that you know I
I know,
love
that's
this.
why I said the word capacity. I'm like, I know that like, you're like the capacity queen here. So that's,
Yeah,
yeah.
just I'll latch onto it everywhere because it is. This is what I always challenge my clients to do is to not just say like, "Oh, the kids are draining for me," right? Why are they draining right now? Is it because you're touched out? Because maybe you have a more physical job and you're like, I just need some spice today, please. Or maybe it's because you were at work all day and people were talking and the phone was ringing. And I know for me in the lab, like the analyzer, like constant white noise. And I used to get home and be like, I just need silence. For 5 minutes, I just need silence. So it wasn't, oh, the kids are driving me nuts. It was, I'm overstimulated from hearing so much today. I'm going to go give myself 5 minutes of silence. And it's so cool because then now when you've done that, now like it's just this little like increase on your capacity again every time you actually address like why is something draining for you to its core. Because even a client last week was saying that she was having a hard time because a coworker did something wrong that she should have known was right. I said, okay, like, why is that draining for you? And she was like, because I'm trying to be emotionally mature and have a conversation with her, but also part of me wants to be like, smack you in the side of the head, like, what were you thinking? And I was like, so is the drain that she did this thing, or is the drain that you have this like internal battle between your core values and like nature, like the things that were taught to you over life? And she was like, probably the latter. And I was like, okay, so let's work on that so that when these things happen, like, yeah, we have to have that conversation and we still have to deal with the thing, but we're not also dealing with like everything that's going on up here. Like every time we can solve that, now it's just something that's part of everyday life. Like it's just something that we deal with. The kids are gonna try to talk to you when they come home. How can that just be something that they do instead of something that's like, oh, this is another part of my day and I just want to like rip my hair out, right? And I very much so too. I can't handle horror movies. Like, and I haven't been able to since my daughter was born. I'm like, no more, no, thank you. I just want to feel safe in my home and not feel like I can't shut the lights off. Like, yeah, I can't do it.
But that's the thing though. It's like we are the creators of our reality. And so if we want something, we have to create that. Like we have to create the space for it. We have to create the capacity for it. We have to create the environment for it. So it's like if you want to be able to travel more, if you want to be able to do XYZ more, like you have to put a plan in place and you can create that if that's what you want. But then it's also letting those outside things that are maybe holding you down or tying you up or draining your energy. It's like feeling into those things, learning all those things and all those pieces, and not giving yourself. I mean, I also think of, when you talked about the horror stuff too, it's like if we just continue to do these things and to go to, let's talk about maybe like a friend group, because this just popped up in my head, was like a friend group, like friend groups that maybe aren't as beneficial to you as they once were. And now you're like, okay, well, I feel like I should hang out with them because in the past we have. But now I realize that maybe they don't bring out the best in me. Maybe they don't. I don't know. There's just so many things that you could think about with that, but it's like, it's really feeling into, is this bringing me to the place that I want to be? Is hanging out with these people really helping me expand and grow? Or is this holding me back? Are these the people that are saying, no, you're dreaming too big. No, you can't be doing what you're doing. Are you sure? Like second guessing because they want you to stay this person that they know you as, this person that has always said yes, has always just done whatever they said to do, or maybe it's even going out and partying or whatever it is.
Yeah.
There's just so much of that it's like, if you want a life that looks different, if you want a life that's like, whatever your biggest dreams and desires are, you have to do something different in order to create that. That might mean saying no to people, not staying out late, maybe not drinking anymore, maybe not doing XYZ, whatever it is, so that you can get yourself to that place that you want to be in. And that's, I think, the hard thing for people. I mean, it is. It's like when you start going through what we're going through and like unleashing all these things that keep coming up and peeling away the pieces that you don't love and that aren't serving you anymore, like you start to change a little bit. And then the people behind you are like, but wait, you're changing. I don't like that. It doesn't feel safe to me. So now it doesn't feel safe to them anymore that you're changing. And so it's just really sitting with, I think my whole point of all of this is just really sitting with those things that like light you up, that are like a heck yes to your body, that like this is what I want, this is where I want to go, and doing more of that. And if it's something that's like, oh, this just feels like it's draining my energy, it's pulling me this place that I don't want to be in, it's not allowing me to grow, it's not allowing me to expand, letting go of those things. And yes, it's not going to be easy because this growth journey is not always easy, but it's so rewarding. It's so empowering when you can really just step on that other side of the fear. On the other side of fear is freedom. And there's just so much of it. There's so much goodness on that other side if we can just let go of that piece that, I mean, our nervous system's response is to keep us safe. And so it will keep us in this unfamiliar, or the familiar hell over the unfamiliar XYZ, because that's just what it knows. And so it's going to try to keep you around the people that feel safe to you, or it's going to try to keep you around all the things that you've been doing in the past, even if you don't love it, because that's just what our nervous system does.
Yeah.
Anyways.
Yeah. I love the word should too. That's something when I listen to my clients talking about things, and like anytime they say should, I'm like, why? You know, because we don't want to deal with the lash out from stepping away from groups. We're worried that if we step away, they're going to like talk about how much we've changed, right? Like, I think that that's one of the most powerful questions that we can just ask ourselves on this journey is why? Why does it make me feel that way? Why do I think that I should be doing that? Like, why just, why all the time? I think just challenging those thoughts and challenging those feelings is getting comfortable with that and feeling safe in questioning why. Like, think about our toddlers and they ask why, and we tell them you're asking too many questions. That's the first time that we stopped questioning ourselves. and now we're back into this opportunity where it's like, no, I think that we need to start asking why, like toddlers, like, because we're just going through the motions and we don't even know why something feels a certain way for us. Why does something feel good? Why does something feel bad? Why does it feel good this time but not this time? Like, what's the difference here? Like, yeah, it's a big exploration journey, I think, and it's beautiful.
Yeah, why is so powerful. And that's something I didn't allow myself to really do up until I quit my nursing job. Really, I didn't allow myself, even in the religion that I was in and all the things, I just never questioned, like, well, why? I remember my first coach was like, well, why do you believe that? And I sat there like, that's a great question. I think I was just brought up this way. And so I was told to, and so I do.
Yeah.
But like, that's why having a mentor or a coach or somebody who's going to ask you the hard questions is so important. Because just asking a simple question like, why do you believe that? I mean, it rocked my world. I was like, I don't know. I really don't know. And so it's asking those why questions and being okay to ask the why questions. And it is okay to question, and knowing that it's okay to question and feeling safe in your questioning, feeling safe to just be like, I need to ask because I don't know. I don't know.
Yeah. And I like having the coach or mentor. Sometimes they can help you find why, right? Sometimes we've seen it enough in other people and we have our intuition and all of these pieces, and we can be like, maybe this exists for you because of this, because sometimes we don't know why we feel a certain way about things. We don't know where it comes from in our childhood. Like, the why thing just came to me now. How many times do I tell my kids, like, stop asking questions, right? I think just as toddlers, again, we're so burnt out. We're just like, no more. Yeah.
It is a hard age, toddlers. That's a hard age.
Yeah.
Yes. And when you talked about at the first part of this podcast, when you said that they're 10 and 7, I think your kids are,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
From like 6 to 12 was like my favorite. Gosh, they're just, yeah. So you're in the prime of it. You're in the prime of and not to say that any age isn't great. I mean, my son is 16, my daughter's 18. I love their ages too, but it's like at this point now they've kind of like grown out of needing me. And I mean, we legit just went on a vacation, left my son home for the first time. And like that's crazy. They don't need me enough that I can go on vacation without that. Like that to me is crazy. But it's like raising our little humans to be these beautiful beautiful beings that can take care of themselves, that we're giving them these tools. This is why we're doing this work too. It's not just for ourselves, and I know you feel the same way. It's not, this work I'm not doing is not just for myself, it's for my generation, for the generations past, and for the generations for future. Like we are creating the change. Like, yeah.
It makes doing the hard work a lot easier, I think sometimes. And I'm like, if I can lay the foundation and then my kids just build the house from the foundation, like it's worth doing it. It's like, I was thinking about in this move, there's been a couple of times that like I go to do something and I've got like hospital dry hands. I have thin skin. Like there's some stuff that I'm like, I can't do this. And my brother's like, you've never worked a physical job in your life, have you? And I'm like, no, but I've worked some very mentally and emotionally taxing, like it's one person's hard isn't less than the other person's hard, and I'll take the mental and emotional hard job over the physical labor like any day of the week, because it does just make it so much easier for everybody else. It's beautiful.
Yeah. Thank you so much. This conversation has been beautiful. I love getting together with people and just having talks, because they could just go like all different directions and you just never know. And I love it. So this was great. So thank you so much for being here. And before we head out, is there anything that you would like to share? I know you could talk about if there's anything that you're doing inside of your coaching, and how people can find you, like any of that stuff.
So you can find me on Instagram as the Capacity Queen. I actually, last week is the first time that I launched my own Kriya. I did not call it a challenge because I think sometimes it's triggering for people, and the purpose behind this one is to create capacity. It is to ground ourselves. It's to relieve some stress. It's just for people that don't know what Kriyas are, but I'm sure if they're listening to your podcast, they do. It's just some yoga and breath work and a beautiful meditation to ground ourselves at the end. It's totally free. I'm just asking people to share their journey because it's what I'm studying in the certification. So it's got the video, I've got PDF resources that go with it, and the link is in my Instagram bio. Say hi. I love when people just use social media to be social. That's like my biggest thing, is just connecting and meeting beautiful people. And we all have such unique perspectives and journeys. And I think that it's just really cool to expand that. And yeah. Thank you for having me today. This was so fun.
Yeah. Yes, thank you so much for being here, and we will see you next time.
Sounds good. Bye.
Oh, thank you for listening to this episode. I hope you loved listening as much as I loved recording. Each and every conversation that I have here on this podcast just lights my soul on fire. I love having conversations where we explore and challenge our ways of thinking. So if you've resonated with anything here and you're looking for more, please connect with me on Facebook in my Soul Deep community group, which is free. I'm also offering all my listeners a free month in my Soul Deep Connection membership. I have poured my heart and soul into this membership, bringing you resources to help you grow into the best and truest version of yourself. I've used my knowledge and experience as a nurse, combined with my knowledge and experience as a coach, breathwork facilitator, and somatic embodiment guide. This library consists of breathwork, kriyas, and other resources and modalities that will help you learn about and give you the healing tools to live the life you've been dreaming about, and to help you find your true passion and zest for life again. This library of resources is vital for everyday maintenance. And on top of the library of resources, there are live monthly calls, ranging from breathwork, kundalini, full moon or new moon circles, as well as guest speakers on a variety of different topics from decluttering to marketing to sisterhood and all things healing and wellness. So make sure you join today to get you back on track to living that thriving life that you are longing for. Remember, the first month is free, and my hope is that you find so much value that staying is an absolute no-brainer. It really is everything that I was looking for as I started my journey, and so much more. I truly hope to see you inside my community. And if you haven't yet, please follow me here and on social. Like and subscribe, and make sure to share your favorite episode with your friends and community. And when you do, make sure to tag me in that post. If you tag me, you'll be entered into a drawing for that month where you can win a free one-to-one session, breathwork or coaching session with me. All the links will be in the show notes here below. Until next time, Soul Deep fam, and in the words of my dear friend Mary Lacey Banks, I'm holding you so tight in a thought hug.